What is months? No! What is wrong with my life? Hi team, I am here doing my November wrap up. That was hard. Okay, so I did so well in November. I don't understand how it worked because I slumped for literally like 2 weeks. And I don't understand. But I got 22 bucks off my TBR. That includes DNFs, but 22 bucks off my TBR. That's amazing. So for starters, I am going to run you through my DNFs. I'm going to try and make this a bit rapid fire because it's 22 bucks. It's going to be quite long if I don't try and speed it up. So I DNF'd Sleepless by Louise Mumford, The Silent Wife by Karen Slaughter, and The Storm by Amanda Jennings. All three of them were for Galliathon. I had e-arcs of them, and I just really could not get into them. I don't really know what any of them are about because I've kind of just erased them from my mind. All of them were meant to be kind of like thrillers, but when I was reading them, I just really wasn't into them. I weren't happy with them. So in the end, I just DNF'd them. I said, not worth my time right now, I'm sorry. But I got rid. So those are the first three that I DNF'd. Then I DNF'd a physical book, and that was The Wolf Wilder by Catherine Rundle. I got sent this by Tandem for a read-along they were doing of said book. And I tried reading it. I didn't get far in, I'm lying completely. I got to like page 50. And then I just decided the book wasn't for me. I think this is a middle grade. I was actually planning on making a full video about my vlogging this because it's a middle grade and the read along was for parents and children, and I signed up to it not knowing it was for parents and children. So it sent stuff like crayons for the kids to colour in and things like that. I had to do some colouring in of a wolf and things like that. So I was going to do a full vlog on this, but I just was not enjoying the story. So in the end I DNF'd. And this is a story about a girl called Theodora who's, I think her mother gets kidnapped, and she, along with these pack of wolves, go across Russia to try and save her, and that's what it's about. But I couldn't get into it, so I did DNF this story, which I'm a bit sad about, but what can you do? You didn't like it, you DNF. Then, in terms of physical books that I read this month, I say physical, in terms of books I read this month, I first finished the book 910 by Nora Raleigh Baskin. This is a story about, it's a story about 4 children set the day before 9/11, and it's about how their 4 separate stories interconnect through the tragedy of 9/11. And it's a really good story. It is a middle grade, so I thought it was so good to actually get these really important themes. It talks about such a tragic event, and it does it so well for a middle grade audience and a middle grade setting. I really enjoyed this story. At the time I gave it a 4-star, but when I was looking through and deciding what to do, I dropped that down. No, I gave it a 5-star. Sorry, that was my mistake. I gave it a 5-star, but then I was looking through and I decided to drop it down to a 4 because I really did enjoy this story, but I do feel as though, kind of personal thing, I would have liked more 9/11 content because this is obviously, it's set the day before. I knew that going in, so it's pretty stupid of me, but I would have liked a little bit more about 9/11 as opposed to the story. But I did really enjoy it. Probably one I'm going to reread because I really do like this. Yeah, good story. I'm really happy with it. Then I read the book The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. Did not like that. I gave this book a 2-star. I was really disappointed with how it went out. I was mainly disappointed with things that would be considered spoilers, so I can't really tell you about them. But basically, I spent this entire book bored out of my head, but carrying on because I was always told when you get to the twist, it'll be really good, and the book is boring, but the twist makes it worth it. And I just didn't like the twist. I thought it was boring. I enjoyed the twist in a sense. Like, when it happened, I was like, oh, that's good. But then it carried on, and I was just like, oh, okay, right. I just lost interest, and I was not a big fan. So in the end, I gave that a 2-star book, and I don't have it anymore. I unhauled it, and yep. Sorry. Then I read the book More Happy Than Not by Adam Silvera. I bought this in October on a I'm feeling crappy so I'll make myself happy day. I went to Waterstones and bought myself a couple of books, this being one of them. This was highly recommended to me. I loved Adam Silvera's writing from They Both Die at the End, and I thought I need to give this one a go. I actually now have all of Adam Silvera's books aside from one, so I just need to collect that one book. But this was the second one I read. As far as I'm aware, this is his debut novel, and it's about a young lad called Aaron who's recovering from a traumatic event in his past, and his girlfriend is trying to help him see the positives, and suddenly he meets this boy called Thomas who also builds him up, and Aaron suddenly starts questioning his life, where it's gone, where it's going, and how he can make himself happy, and why being happy is so hard for him. And I thought this was a really powerful, emotional story. I prefer They Both Die at the End, if I'm honest. I think this was a debut novel, and when you see other books such as They Both Die at the End, it shows. But I loved this book, and I love it so much. I gave it a 5-star. I want to reread it. It's made me think Adam Silvera could be one of those authors that no matter what they write, I'm going to have it. And I feel like every time I pick up a book from him, I'm going to cry. I really love this book, and I would absolutely recommend it for a bit of emotional turmoil, if that's what you're fancying. Then I've listened to an audiobook. So throughout this year, I've been listening to the Lara Jean To All the Boys I've Loved Before trilogy, and this month I finished the final book, which is Always and Forever Lara Jean. I gave this story a 4-star rating because I listened to the second book last month. If you have not seen my wrap up for last month, go and check it out. I mentioned that I had some problems with that book. I thought it was very problematic, and in this book I feel as though that was better. I feel as though it was much better than it was in the second book, and I enjoyed this book a lot more. I just feel as though this story, which follows Lara Jean as she's moving to college and things like that, I thought it would have been nice to really focus on those family relationships more instead of the typical teenage romance of her relationship and things like that. And I would have really loved more of a family dynamic kind of book. And I feel as though we did get elements of that, but it wasn't as focused on it as I would have liked, considering that's what this story was about, is about her and her family, and then her relationship kind of came into it. Basically, I just didn't want a relationship story. Stupid, considering I knew that's what it was, but I would have liked more of a balance between family and relationship, you know. But it was a good story. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it much better than book 2. So I gave it a 4-star rating, and I was really happy with it. Then, the weekend before Galley-a-thon, I read a book called The Stranger in My Bed by Karen King. I gave this a 3-star rating. This story follows a husband and wife. The husband is in a car accident, but he loses his memory because of it. His wife was planning on leaving him because of him being quite an abusive husband, and when he suddenly wakes up acting all kind and only remembering their relationship up until the day they arrived home from their honeymoon, she then starts thinking, maybe I can change him, and maybe if he is this caring now, I can stop him being like he was, and I should give him a second chance. Now, I was reading this story and I thought it was interesting, but all the way through, I didn't feel as though it was a thriller. I was told all the way through it was a thriller, but I didn't feel as though it had any thriller elements. And then I got to the end and I was like, there wasn't even a twist. There was no suit to it. It was like a domestic fiction story, if I'm honest, but because it was billed as a thriller, I was a bit disappointed. So in the end, I gave it a 3-star rating. I thought it was a good book. It was decent, but don't go into it expecting a thriller, if you know what I mean. All right, moving on. Then Galley-a-thon started, and the first book I read was One by One by Ruth Ware. I actually read this as an e-arc, but then was sent a physical copy by Tandem Collective for a read-along. I read the book just before I found out I was part of the read-along. Literally the day after I finished, I got an email saying I'd been chosen to be part of the read-along. I was like, oh, okie dokie. That was a bit awkward. But Tandem sent me this lovely copy of the book, and I love it. I really enjoyed the book itself. I thought it was my favourite of the 2 Ruth Wares I've read, because I read The Turn of the Key earlier this year. I enjoyed this one a lot more, I'm going to be honest, than I did The Turn of the Key. But that does not mean I love this. I gave this a 3.5 star. I thought it was really good. It had all the thriller, mystery, kind of like murder mystery aspects to it. I really liked the idea. I was definitely getting Agatha Christie vibes. But I feel as though, one, I predicted the killer from the start. I knew who it was. I was hoping there'd be a twist. There was not. 2, not enough people died for my liking. Like, I thought, because it's called One by One, this would be a book where people got picked off one by one until there was only the killer and then one person who was going to be the hero left, and that was it. No, that's not really how it worked. I thought it was a great story as it was, but I just personally expected a little bit more from it. But it was a great book. Definitely give it a read. And I enjoyed it that much. You might see this in another video coming up next week. Then for Galley-a-thon, I read the book The Last Resort by Susie Holiday. I gave this book a 3-star rating. I thought it was okay. It's basically right. It's a story where a group of people travel to an island to be part of this study and to sample new technology. But when they get there, they find out that some of their secrets are about to come to light. And I really like the new twist on a kind of old thriller trope of the locked on an island, can't escape thing. But they used technology to kind of advance that story. But I feel as though it went nowhere. There was no kind of thrill to it. I'm going to be completely honest, I didn't really enjoy any sort of death. There was no satisfaction with anything that happened. And then at the end, it just felt pointless. To be honest, I was really disappointed with it. I don't even know why I gave it a 3-star. I think I gave it a 3-star because it was easy enough to read. But now I'm thinking about it, it's probably deserving of less. It's probably more of a 2-star, 2.5. It was an easy enough to read story. If you can get a hold of it, it's worth giving a good read because it's quite interesting and it's quite fun and easy. But it's not the best thriller you will read ever. Like, if you read one thriller in your life, it still won't be the best one. It's not thrillery in any way. So after that, I read the book I Lie in Wait by Amanda Brittney. This was another NetGalley arc I had, and I loved this story. This is a story about a family who go back up to a place in Scotland where our main character's sister went missing the year previous, and it's about them trying to figure out what happened to her, because it's long been believed that she was kidnapped and murdered, and basically they don't believe that's what happened. So they go back up to try and almost get some closure or to figure out what happened. They go up for kind of like dual reasons. And I thought this was just such a good story. It was thrilling throughout. It was so fast-paced. I really enjoyed it. I want a physical copy of this book to have another reread because I'm really feeling that because it was such a good story. Definitely worth giving a go. I've never read an Amanda Brittney book before. I do have one, but I haven't read it. And now I'm like, I'm probably going to give that one a go very, very shortly. After that, I read Have You Seen Me by Kate White. This is the second book featuring kind of like an amnesia trope, and I don't mind them. I think they're quite interesting. This book features our main character who goes into work one morning just to be told that she hasn't worked there for years. She has gone in a fugue state and gone missing for a few days and turned up at work with no memory. And then suddenly she starts questioning what happened, why has her memory gone missing, what's happened to her, is it related to a trauma that happened, because she suddenly keeps having flashes of less than okay things. There is quite a sinister turn, and I thought this was a really interesting story. I gave this a 5-star. This was kind of tied for my thriller of the month with the book it actually was, and I thought it was just such a good story. There was a lot of thrill to it. I love the kind of trope where you're figuring things out at the same time as the protagonist. And that's one of the benefits of an amnesia trope. There are obviously quite a few negatives of it, but I do love that type of thing from an amnesia trope. So I found that to be a lot of fun. I was really happy with it. And I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. I thought it was fabulous, and it's definitely one that I would suggest giving a go. Then the final book I read for Galley-a-thon, which was the only physical arc I had, was How It All Blew Up by Arvin Ahmadi. I went into this a bit dubious because a lot of my friends had read a copy of this book before me because of how long it actually took to get to me. And they said they were a bit more disappointed in it than they hoped they would be. They thought it would be a lot better and it wasn't. So I was quite scared going into this because I thought, I'm not going to like it. I loved it. It was so good. I gave this a 5-star. I can see why my friends were not best pleased with it. But I think this was just what I needed. I read this at the perfect time. It was so light-hearted. It was so fun and easy to read. And after a week where I was definitely slumping during Galeathon, this was where I DNF'd 3 out of the 4 books. Even the 2 books that I gave a 5-star, the only reason I actually finished them was because I was listening on audiobook to them. So I was definitely slumping, and this was just what I needed to make me feel better. I loved it. I gave it a 5-star. I plan on rereading this one day. This is a story about an 18-year-old boy called Amir who is Muslim and gay. The story starts with him in an interrogation room at an airport because they start questioning him because they think he's a terrorist, where, as a matter of fact, the truth is he ran away to avoid the truth coming out about him being gay, coming out to his family, which he didn't want to deal with, so he ran away instead. And it's his story about the time where he ran away and what it's about. And I found it to be so fun and carefree and enjoyable. It was just what I needed. It came at the perfect time, so I'm so happy I read it. 5-star book. Following on from that, I read the Bane Chronicles, which is my continuation of the Shadowhunter Chronicles. I vlogged my experience of this. I will link it in the card so you can go and watch it. I enjoyed this story. It is a collection of short stories, all featuring the character of Magnus Bane. It's all about his life. The story started out bad and then got so good throughout. So if you're reading this book, don't be put off by the first 2 stories because they were not good at all. Overall, I gave this book a 4-star rating. What I did, and you will see it if you watch that vlog, I rated this from each individual story. I gave each individual story a rating. And then once I got to the end, I kind of added up all of those scores and then divided it by, there are 11 stories, so I did it by 11. And it gave me kind of like the mean score, which was actually dead on 4-star. So it was perfect. And I think this is a 4-star book because a lot of the books were fantastic. There were definitely a lot of 5-star books. There were definitely some 4 and definitely some 3 and 2 stars as well. But great story, a good continuation of the Shadowhunter Chronicles. I definitely feel as though in some stories there is so much more plot in this that enriches what you already know, and then there are some that are they're not relevant to the Shadowhunter Chronicles. It's just a nice little bit of information for you. So I enjoyed this story and I thought it was a lot of fun, and I'm really glad I read it. I started out this one thinking, I'm really not liking this. I kind of want a DNF, kind of want to unhaul it, but I'm like, no. It's Bane, it's Shadowhunters, you're vlogging this, you're getting through it. So I did, and I'm glad because it was really good. And following on from that, I read The Game by Lindsay Miller. This was gifted to me by Liam, who is Brooke's book's boyfriend. I love Liam, he's a great, great friend. And he gifted me this book, which I was so excited to read. And it was such a letdown. It sounds so good. It sounds like my kind of thing. This is a book that really gave me like Pretty Little Liars vibes, and I love that show. And I was really, really feeling this. This is a game where seniors in high school play a game called Assassin, where you have to try and fake kill your opponents until suddenly there is a killer that starts killing people off in alphabetical order. Sounds great, doesn't it? For me, the issue is, in this book, there is one character with the name that begins with the letter A, one that begins with the letter B, one that begins with the letter C, and so on. So you knew who was going to die at any particular point. You knew who was next. Therefore, when there was any sort of thrilling, oh, no, you're at risk moment, you knew they weren't going to die because their letter doesn't come in next. So it was fine. It was safe. And I feel as though that's how I felt all the way through. I also did predict who the killer was very, very quickly. But I just felt as though there was no thrill to it because the story in the blurb told you that people were being picked off in alphabetical order. So if our main character, who is called Leah, so her name begins with L, I knew she was never at any risk at all. And I was just like, okay. Like, it was fine. I gave this book a 2-star overall because there were some good points. It was easy enough to read. I think I read this entire book in like a day and a half. Like, I think I read about 50 pages or something on day 1, and then in the rest I finished, and that's only because think I read the Bane Chronicles and then started this with the last 50 pages before I went to bed or something like that. It was a very quick read. It also has, which I really liked, a non-binary character where their identity is not used as a plot device. They're just non-binary because that is their character. And they're so much more than that as well. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that's just their entire personality, but I liked seeing that there was just a non-binary character in there that was not used to further the plot. It wasn't even mentioned. I think it was mentioned once, and that was it. And I loved that. Like, there were definitely some good points to this book, but overall it was a 2-star book because it was just too easy to know what was going on, and therefore I didn't feel any enjoyment from it. Following on from that, Jade from paperback to hardback and I continued our buddy read of the Women's Murder Club. This one is the 5th Horseman, which is the 5th book in the series. This was James Patterson and Maxine Petro. I really enjoyed this story. This is about people are dying in hospitals, and the Women's Murder Club are trying to figure out whether it's just negligence by the hospital staff or whether something more sinister is going on. I thought this was a really good story. It was quite emotional and it involved quite a lot of courtroom drama, which I do really enjoy. So I thought this was a really good installment. In the end, I gave this a 4-star. I didn't get any big emotional feelings from it, and I did feel as though the start was quite slow. But overall, I did really enjoy this story, and I thought it was a lot of fun, and I'm so glad that I read it and carried on this series. Then, after that, I read the Shadowhunter Codex by Cassandra Clare and Joshua Lewis, who is Cassandra Clare's husband. It also features a lot of illustrations by a variety of illustrators as well. But this was a lot of fun. This wasn't a story, so it was much harder for me to talk about. Throughout the Shadowhunter Chronicles, the Codex is mentioned. It's kind of like the information booklet. It's like the encyclopedia of Shadowhunters. It tells you everything you ever need to know. So I read this and I thought it was really good. I think this is the type of book I will refer back to if things get mentioned at a later date, like a character or a weapon, and I'm like, I don't really know what that is. This is the place you go to find out. If someone mentions a weapon, you don't know what a weapon is, you just look for it here and you'll find out exactly what it's about and what it is and what it's used for and who it can kill and who it can't kill, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's really good. It's like an information booklet that I will continue to use whenever I read the series. So I thought it was a lot of fun. I rated it a 4-star because although it doesn't have the story element that I think I want from all Shadowhunter books, I knew that going in. And I think because of knowing what this was, it's definitely one I rated differently this time. And in terms of what it adds to the Shadowhunter world, it adds quite a lot, and I'm really happy about that. So I gave it a 4-star rating. The next book I read was Bright Lies by A.A. Abbott. This was my thriller of the month, so make sure you check out my review of this book. This is a really good story. It follows a character called Emily who is groomed by her stepfather, so she decides to run away from home and straight into the arms of her rescuer called Jack, who doesn't know that Emily is underage when he takes her into his home to keep her safe. And he also doesn't know that she is hiding secrets of her past. And it's quite an interesting story. I won't talk about it more. If you want to know more, there is a spoiler-free review up in my thriller of the month, so go and watch that. Really good story. Definitely recommend this book, but it does contain a lot of heavy themes. A list of content warnings are in the description of my thriller of the month video, so please check those out before you do watch that video. Next, I read The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I thought this was fine. I have no strong feelings towards it. I thought it was an easy enough read. I thought it was enjoyable, but I knew who was going to die, so it just kind of rendered that mystery pointless. And then I didn't like who the killer was. I just thought it was crap, like that reveal. The story itself was good. I gave this a 3-star rating, but the reveals were really rubbish, in my personal opinion. But it's one of those. It's easy enough to read. Give it a go. It's decent, but I wouldn't personally put my stamp of recommendation on it. I didn't really like it that much. Then I read the book The Sixth Target, which is the 6th book in the Women's Murder Club. Jade and I read this together. This is a story that follows a shooting spree that happens in San Francisco, and then alongside that, a child is also kidnapped. So it's about the Women's Murder Club trying to figure out each of these cases and find out what is going on. I thought this was good. I gave it a 4-star rating. I feel as though there were too many stories happening. there were, I think there were 3 separate narratives going on, and I feel as though they were added so all of the Women's Murder Club, because there are 4 members of the Women's Murder Club, I feel as though the stories were added so that all of the Women's Murder Club had a role in the story, because I feel as though our main character Lindsay was focused on the child kidnapping, then Yuki and Claire were focused on the ferry shooting, and then Cindy was focused on another story featuring murders that happened in her apartment block in her building. And I feel as though the stories just kind of happened so the characters had something to do, rather than actually being written so the characters had a relevant story. They had to just give them their own, which it just kind of felt overwhelming a bit, and none of the stories I think got enough attention. So I thought this was interesting enough. It was a good story. I really enjoyed it. Can't wait to carry on. But yeah, that was an issue for me, and I wasn't the biggest fan, so I gave it a 4-star. Then, my final book of the month was The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. I gave this book a 4.5, but I personally think this story deserves a 5-star. I love this. This story follows Kara, who can jump between worlds. Basically, you can jump from alternate dimensions from one world to another. The only rule is that before you jump to another world, that version of you must be dead, because 2 of you can't exist in the same world. So Kara is dead in all 380 worlds apart from 8, so she's dead in 372. And she can jump to all of these worlds to collect necessary information, and then suddenly one of her doppelgangers dies under mysterious circumstances, and what Kara discovers can cause a lot of threats for her world, the world she's gone to, and every other world in existence. And the story is so good. It is so interesting. I only gave this a 4.5 star when I think personally it deserves a 5, because I'm not a big sci-fi reader, so when I was reading it, it took me a while to get into it. But I have said, and I've been talking to Brooke because we buddy read this together, I know for a fact when I reread this, which I'm going to reread this, Brooke and I have already planned, we're going to be buddy reading it again later on. When I reread this, it will be getting a 5-star. Because I know the story, and because I know that sci-fi is a bit harder for me to understand, but I'll be familiar with this, I know that I won't have the same issue that I had this time around. I won't struggle to get into it because I already know what's going on. I won't have to read it really slowly to make sure I don't miss anything, because I know what's going to happen. It'll just be a case of, I remember this, let's just go, let's carry on. And I know it's going to be a 5-star book. Honestly, I think it deserves to be 5-star right now, but I only gave it a 4.5 because I can't ignore the fact that I did struggle to get into it at first, but it wasn't an issue. I loved it. This book has stayed with me. I think, if I'm honest, this might be my favourite book of the month. I love this so much, and I cannot wait to reread it. It's precious. But that is my wrap up. They are all the 22 books I read/DNF this month, and I really love them. Let me know in the comments down below if you have read any of these books and what rating you gave it, because I'm really interested to know what you guys thought of the books I read this month. Do you agree with what I said? Do you have anything that you disagree with me on? I'm interested, so make sure you let me know. While you are down there, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe and the bell so you are always notified when I post. Other than that, guys, I will see you in the next video. Bye.
SafeMusicList.com. Royalty-free music for marketing and promotional videos.